Respect. It's an important thing to have for the people in your life, but is it an important thing to have for your enemies? See, well, many would argue the best way to defeat your enemies is to respect them, because if you don't respect your enemies, you'll underestimate just how powerful and how nefarious they may be. There's also those who firmly exist in the camp that you should be as disrespectful as possible towards your enemy, to get them as riled up and angry as possible. Because if you're able to get under their skin and you're able to make them angry, they won't think rationally. And there's no more surefire way to lose a fight, be it physical or verbal, than getting angry. And thus, whether or not you should act with respect towards your enemies is an ongoing debate even to today. However, in the JJK universe, it's not a debate. In a world where sorcerers have to battle against curses, the very amalgamations of negative emotions, respect is by far and away an afterthought. In a world of complete absolutes, with one side claiming to be the good guys and one side claiming to be the bad guys, it's very easy to understand how respect would be lost. And thus JJK, just like so many other anime and manga, is filled with disrespectful moments. And these disrespectful moments come from all sides. Whether they be curses, sorcerers, or men for hire, disrespect is rampant. And honestly, I'm here for it. See, JJK is unique when it comes to an anime or a manga, because in the world of JJK, there are the few and there are the many. At least that's the way that it works for the majority of the story. Now, the few are those who exist in an upper echelon of power that the many could never even hope to obtain. Those people are Sukuna and Gojo and Toji, while the many are people like Nanami, Yuji, Nobara, basically everybody else. And while there is a mass variance in the many in terms of skill, as both Miwa and Yuji could be considered parts of the many, but are vastly different when it comes to strength, until very recently in the manga, it didn't appear as though anybody in the many would ever be able to achieve the status of the few. And thus, usually, when one of the few ended up in a battle against one of the many, disrespect ensued. And every single time, I'm here for it. And we recently did a video like this for Naruto, where we did a top 10 most disrespectful moments in Naruto. But Naruto, if you include Boruto, was almost 5 times longer than JJK. Closer to 4, but still, you get it. Which is why today we're keeping our list short and sweet, because today we're talking the top 5 most disrespectful moments in JJK. Ranked and explained. But before we get to ranking or explaining anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you want to see the most disrespectful form of media that I make, go ahead and follow my anime podcast, Otaku's Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything that happened in anime. This week, it's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And if you want to be respectful to me, guys, go ahead and meander on over into my merch store, otakusanonymous.net, where you can pick up some of the greatest anime t-shirts, sweatshirts, and sticker packs known to man. So, disrespect. It's easy to find in Jujutsu Kaisen. There's no ancient rivals that fight each other once a year and regard each other with respect as they head onto the battlefield to see who's better this year. And while there is moments of respect on the battlefield, like Sukuna telling Jogo he's strong, or Sukuna's conversation with Kashimo during their battle, when it really boils down to it, more often than not, nobody in Jujutsu Kaisen is standing on airs. They're there to do one thing and one thing alone, and that's destroy their enemies. And usually, in a way, that's not gonna look good for their enemies. But this doesn't mean that most things that happen in JJK are disrespectful. Like, obviously I could sit here and say that the way that Mahito popped Nanami was disrespectful, but it's just kind of who Mahito is. And in the same vein, I could say that Kenjaku watching Mahito and Mekamaru's battle and realizing that he doesn't need to jump in is also disrespectful. But once again, that's just kind of who Kenjaku is. And in the same vein, I don't want to conflate disrespect with badassery. Because for those of you who have read the manga, you could say that Yuji in his I'm you moment to Mahito is disrespectful. But to me, that's an entirely different thing. It's not disrespect. In fact, if it's anything, it's actually probably respect, but it's an incredibly powerful and sick moment, but I don't think it's rooted in disrespect. And thus in this video, we're gonna be sticking to moments where you go, oh my god, I can't believe he just did that. The type of thing that would cause Super Hot Flame to jump back into an uproarious crowd. That's what we're sticking with. And thus the first thing on our list is an honorable mention, because I'm not entirely sure if it falls under the categorization of disrespect or just straight up evil. Because coming up in our honorable mention is Mahito and Sukuna laughing at Yuji. Now, this scene comes about after Mahito uses idol transfiguration on Junpei, who Gege Katami had introduced as a possible addition to the new gen's Team 7. And thus, over the course of a couple of chapters, and I believe 2 episodes in the anime, Yuji is seen getting closer and closer with Junpei. But all of this would eventually come to a head after Mahito turns Junpei into a sorcerer using his idol transfiguration, which allows Junpei to finally exact revenge on all of the bullies he had in high school. Now, Junpei was able to fight Mahito because he was born with the ability to see curses as a baby. However, he didn't have access to curse energy and therefore wasn't a sorcerer per se. However, when Yuji and Junpei finally do come to blows, Yuji is able to slap Junpei out of his villain era, essentially convincing Junpei to join Tokyo's Jujutsu High, where his abilities as a sorcerer would be harnessed and used for good. However, just as soon as they decide to make amends, Mahito shows up. Mahito then pins Yuji to the wall, calling him Sukuna's vessel, and then puts a hand on the shoulder of Junpei, taunting him for being such an idiot to believe that Mahito was a good person, considering the fact that Junpei met Mahito by watching him kill 3 teenagers in a movie theater. That really shouldn't be the craziest news to him. And after Mahito is done taunting Junpei, he turns him into a transfigured human, but like a blue hippo with hair. And this being Yuji's first time seeing a transfigured human, Yuji simply tries to stop Junpei and smack him out of being transfigured. And it's at this point that he begs Sukuna to heal Junpei, turning him back into a regular human. And it's at this point in the story that it's revealed that Sukuna is not Kurama, because boy oh boy, is Yuji not gonna get help. And as opposed to helping Yuji, who's bearing his soul to Sukuna to try and help his friend, Sukuna and Mahito both laugh at him viciously. And for the first time in what will be a series of times, Yuji loses somebody close to him. And he learns, like a kick to the back of the head, that curses are not on his side. But once again, I'm not entirely sure if this moment is disrespectful or just mean, but it's probably both, which is why it deserves at least an honorable mention on this list. Mostly because it's not quite as disrespectful as our number 5 spot, because coming up at number 5, we have our first entry from Gojo. Trust me, not our last. See, this is actually chronologically our most recent disrespectful moment from Gojo, so it's a good as place as any to start. Some light manga spoilers ahead here for those of you who are anime only, but nothing crazy. So for those of you who don't know, after the Shibuya incident is a little arc called the Culling Game arc, and in this arc, Gojo's not around because, as you've seen, he's in the prison realm, and he stays in the prison realm for something like 100 or so chapters. I think he was gone for almost 2 years in the manga. This is because the Culling Game arc is a rather long arc, but really Gojo's only gone for like 14 or so days in the manga, which is a longer time than I would like to spend in a timeless little box, but it's how long he's there, and home is where you make it. Now, pretty much the main motivation of the Jujutsu Squad during the Culling Game arc is getting Gojo back, and there's a couple of fetch quest items that need to be done in order to make sure that that can happen, and not everything goes right. A lot of people die, and surprise, surprise, Japan still super in danger. However, by the end of the Culling Game arc, we got the prison realm back, and now we have all the fun little components we need to open this bad boy up and free Gojo. But the prison realm is kind of crazy. See, because the prison realm is a pocket dimension, and as the prison realm is a little pocket dimension that you can carry on you, it's got some weird space-time mumbo-jumbo rules. And the most important space-time mumbo-jumbo rule, at least as it pertains to today's video, is that when Gojo is either able to break out of the prison realm or is broken out of the prison realm, Kenjaku is able to choose where he's gonna show up. So what does Kenjaku do? The thing that any sane human being would do. He sets the portal for where Gojo is gonna appear, I think, 8,000 feet under the ocean. It could also be 8,000 feet into the ground. I genuinely do not remember. All you need to know is that Gojo is released very, very, very far either underwater or underground, which I believe Kenjaku hoped would keep him for at least a couple of minutes. It super doesn't, as pretty much the first thing that Gojo does after being released from the prison realm is immediately teleport to Kenjaku, Sukuna, and Urame's location. Now, for those of you who are anime only, you do know who Urame is, as Urame presented themselves, we don't know Urame's gender, to Sukuna after his battle against Maharaga. Now, Urame has been with Sukuna ever since he was alive in the Heian era, and either Urame has been around and alive for 1,000 years, or Urame was brought back to life through Kenjaku's powers. I'm not gonna get super into the weeds on that one, because that's pretty much what the entire of the Culling Game arc is about, but the most important thing is that Urame is back with Sukuna, and Urame was most likely brought back to life by Kenjaku because Sukuna didn't recognize them. Being said, after 1,000 years, who knows if they would look the same? And here's the thing, while Urame may not look like much, they are a sorcerer from the Heian era, also known as the Golden Age of Jujutsu, and thus Urame is actually one of the most powerful sorcerers on Earth. I'm trying to think of an anime-only comparison here. I don't know, think of like 2 Nanamis put together. Like if Nanami had a domain expansion, and thus when Gojo instantly teleports from either under the ocean or under the earth, immediately to Kenjaku, Sukuna, and Urame's location, Urame, trying to protect Sukuna, tries to jump him, to which Gojo responds by one-shotting Urame so hard that they fly into a wall and shatter it, all while asking Urame, who are you? Urame, a character probably in the top 12 to top 13 most powerful characters in all of JJK, immediately one-shotted while trying to defend Sukuna, beaten so fast that Gojo never got an answer to the question he asked while he knocked them out cold. Now, while one could say it was polite of him to ask who Urame was, didn't feel polite to me. And thus, we're starting off this list with Gojo, but don't worry, he'll be back. Not at our number 4 spot, because coming in at number 4, we have, well, basically the entire fight of Sukuna versus Jogo. See, while Jogo gets disrespected a whole lot throughout his time in JJK, as he comes to blows against both Gojo and Sukuna, the decidedly way worse whooping he takes is at the hands of Sukuna. See, because while Gojo does defeat him in a battle of domains and decapitate Jogo, Sukuna sat him down, said, "I'm not mad, I'm disappointed," and then literally kicked his jaw off his face. Mind you, this battle between Jogo and Sukuna was not to see who could win. This battle was Jogo trying to stay alive long enough to land one blow on Sukuna. And not only could Jogo not land one singular blow on Sukuna, there are also so many moments of disrespect throughout this fight. Like Sukuna slicing up Jogo's arms like they're prize cuts of meat. Sukuna literally skipping him off buildings, signs, and cars in Shibuya. Jogo picking up the Twin Towers and using them in an attack against Sukuna, all for Sukuna to just cut the buildings and Jogo in half. And to follow this up, just hitting the meanest T-pose of all time. But genuinely, throughout the entirety of this fight, there are two really bad moments for Jogo. And one is Sukuna throwing him all the way down through a building so hard that it knocks his jaw off his mouth. And as Jogo stands there trying to put his jaw back on his face, Sukuna just standing there over him, waiting for him. And two, and probably more importantly, at least in my heart, Sukuna at the end of this battle realizing that Jogo wants to go out with a test of firepower. And thus Sukuna decides to use a technique that we had never seen him use prior to this moment to beat Jogo on his own terms. Not only does he beat Jogo's firepower, he kills the volcano cursed spirit with fire. But maybe the worst part about all of this, at least for me, is that when Sukuna's lighting up his fire arrow to shoot at Jogo's volcanic explosion, he doesn't say the name of the technique out loud. Now, there's a couple of theories as to why Sukuna would do this. The first is to conceal the type of cursed spirit that he is, as people believe if we knew what the name of the fire technique he was using, we'd be able to deduce what kind of cursed spirit Sukuna is. Because as it currently stands, we know the basis of every important curse in JJK, but we don't know Sukuna as a cursed being's basis. And since all we know about him is that he has dismantle, cleave, and malevolent shrine, it's a possibility that if we knew the name of his fire technique, we would know what kind of cursed spirit he was. However, the second theory, and the theory that I subscribe to, is that Sukuna understood that if he said the name of his cursed technique out loud, that Jogo would understand it better. And since telling somebody how your technique works makes that technique stronger, kind of like Nen and how risk can make Nen ability stronger, so that his cursed technique was purposely weaker because he knew he didn't need the power to beat Jogo. And when you don't even have all of the fingers that make you the full version of yourself, and you're coming up against the volcano cursed spirit using a fire-based attack, and you purposely nerf yourself, now that's disrespectful, but not nearly as disrespectful as our first and actual only entry from Toji on this list, Toji versus Gojo. Now, obviously saying Toji versus Gojo is kind of ambiguous because they fight twice, and you could hardly say that the second time they fight was Toji being anywhere near disrespectful. If anything, it was him who was being disrespected. No, more specifically, I'm talking about Toji and Gojo's first fight, but not even just about the fight itself. See, because while the fight itself is incredible and the scale is fantastic, and we get to see Gojo fearful for the first time in the entirety of JJK, truly the disrespect doesn't start until the fight is over. See, because for a while, Toji and Gojo are fighting on equal terms. Toji opens the battle by stabbing Gojo through the chest with a katana, and then he uses his immense speed to confuse Gojo's six eyes, which he's able to accomplish because he swarms Gojo with an army of flyheads. However, Gojo begins to doubt himself in this battle, as he believes that Toji abandoned their battle to go kill Riko. And just as Gojo turns to try and run to get to Riko, that's when Toji appears and uses his inverted spear of heaven to stab through Gojo's infinity. And my God, does he stab Gojo. In the thigh, in the neck, in the chest, in the head. He just stabs and stabs and pulls and stabs. But that's not even the disrespectful moment. I mean, that's just making sure that Gojo dies. No, the disrespectful moment is that after Toji is done stabbing up Gojo a bunch, as he's walking away, he says, "I think I'm starting to remember how to do this." Yes, that's right. Toji, after killing the strongest sorcerer on Earth, is like, oh, feeling warm now, because my man hasn't had a job in so long. He used Gojo as a warm-up. Now that is a level of disrespect I hope I never experience. And fortunately, it's not a level of disrespect that Gojo stood for, as my God did he spin the block. Hollow Purple got it back in blood in a big way. But what's crazy about all of this is that Toji wasn't even necessarily wrong. Gojo was his warm-up because he proceeded to absolutely embarrass Geto. And if it wasn't for Gojo figuring out reverse curse technique and awakening, the universe of JJK would look a lot different. But enough about Gojo getting disrespected. Let's talk about him doling out some disrespect. Because when you're 6'3", pretty, and the most powerful person in the world, you're gonna disrespect some people. Just kind of the way it works. He's a walking plot device, so he's gonna be arrogant about it. And the disrespect with Gojo starts real early, like episode 1 early, because one of the first things that we ever see after Yuji eats the first finger of Sukuna is Sukuna, albeit a weak version of Sukuna, taking over his body. And this version of Sukuna is absolutely running Megumi's face, which makes sense. I mean, this is the weakest version of Megumi we ever see outside of like the child versions of Megumi. However, fortunately, before this version of Sukuna can kill this version of Megumi, our walking pretty plot device shows up with souvenirs for Megumi. And while Sukuna is trying to kill Gojo, Gojo is simply explaining how delicious the souvenirs he brought for Megumi are. And on top of all this, when Sukuna tries to attack Gojo from behind, Gojo simply teleports on top of him. Yes, the cursed spirit who kills people for not kneeling to him is being used as a seat. Then when he swings at Gojo from this position, Gojo grabs his hand and throws him, and then teleports behind him and says, "My student's watching, so I'm gonna show off a bit." And boy does he spends 10 seconds absolutely embarrassing Sukuna. But there's about 2 million men and women who would love to have 10 seconds of Gojo embarrassing them. He was living millions of people's dreams. But the whooping that Gojo puts down on Sukuna honestly pales in comparison to what's coming in at our number 1 spot. Because coming in at our number 1 spot, we have the absolutely racially motivated whooping that Gojo put down on Miguel. I mean, Miguel shows up in chapter 0 as like a special grade threat, holding a whip that he says the people of his village have spent decades weaving. Whip with the ability to nullify curse techniques. And thus, in theory, this whip that everybody in his village has spent decades working on should be the weapon that's able to defeat Gojo. And thus, Miguel goes into this battle feeling good about himself. And just like that, the fight starts, and Miguel launches his first attack at Gojo. What's the first thing that Miguel does? Well, he tries to hit Gojo with his whip. And what's the first thing that Gojo does? Bare hands the whip out of the way. At that moment, I'm turning around. Gojo slaps his whip so hard it destroys 3 years of Mima's weaving. If I try to attack a man and he pimp slaps my whip out of the way while simultaneously destroying years of work, I'm changing sides. Not to mention that Gojo starts his fight by uncovering one of his eyes and saying, "Sorry, I'm gonna need to hurry here. Yeah, let me help you out there. I'll hurry off myself." Not to mention, immediately after pimp slapping my whip away, the biggest cursed spirit we've ever seen comes over and tries to kill Gojo, and all he does is lift his arm, fire a red, kill it, and destroy the windows on every single building in the block. Miguel then has the audacity to use his whip to try and throw an air conditioning unit at Gojo. He just shot a 3-story cursed spirit through the head. We thought the AC was gonna do it? But don't worry, Miguel's still got his whip. And boy oh boy does he get to swinging it, both at Gojo and at the things around them while they're fighting. And as Miguel realizes slowly but surely that he's not gonna hit Gojo, he swings his whip over onto a nearby light and tries to swing away, maybe to find a new place to fight. But lo and behold, Gojo can not only fly, but also teleport. Gojo then proceeds to grab this man by the collar and throw him into the ground so hard I'm surprised he didn't become a chalk outline. But don't worry, Miguel recovers and tries to use his whip to grab a bunch of electrical wires to swing at Gojo, because clearly we haven't learned that noodle-shaped things are simply just not gonna hit him, unless it's Ghettos. And this is where things start to get really bad for Miguel, as Gojo starts to open up with a torn fist against Miguel, so violent that you would think that Miguel owed him money, and like a lot. And Gojo starts this assault with a blow to the stomach and a left hook, then kicks Miguel through a metal railing like it was made of paper, slaps him, backhands him, punches him twice in the neck, another slap, 2 more neck chops, several more front hand and backhand slaps, followed up by a left hook that hits him so hard that it decolorizes the anime for a second. But possibly because Miguel wasn't Campbell's chunky soup already, Gojo proceeds to keep on pushing him. But fortunately for Miguel and everybody who weaved him that whip, Miguel gets away. But this beating that Gojo puts down on Miguel is so bad that Miguel takes my advice and quite literally switches sides. He got slapped so many times by Gojo, he decided to become Yuta's teacher. Do you know how hard you need to be slapped to go from thinking, oh yeah, we need to forcibly turn every human in Japan into a jujutsu sorcerer, even if it kills half of them, to, oh, of course, Gojo, I'll take on your student for you. He would be better with me anyways. Gojo slapped Miguel so hard, he turned into the father who stepped up. That's insane and is by far and away the most disrespectful thing that's ever happened in JJK, and maybe one of the most disrespectful beatdowns we've ever seen in anime history. But what do you guys think? If you had to make a list of the most disrespectful moments in JJK, what would you put on it? Tell me in the comments below, and while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. I mean, like, Mahito turning his hand into Junpei to mock Yuji has gotta be on the list, right? But like, at the same time, that's just who Mahito is. He's just evil.